Good evening, everybody. Now, the scheduled show for tonight was carrying over from my other two shows earlier before I went away to in-person Fringe. And that is the Inky's horror and sci-fi show. Now, I had an interesting moment while in Edinburgh. I woke up one morning and I had a whole new show in my head, which I just had to write down. Didn't think I'd be doing any writing when I was up there. And after a few days, it was quite clear it was going to be mental and no chance. But, you know, these things happen and you go with it. So, so tonight's show is going to be a little bit different. This will be all brand new material I have not even vocalized yet. It's worked in my head. It's worked on paper, but I need to say it. So it's a bit of a work in progress. So some of this material will be for about 3 shows I'm currently working on. And there's crossover. So that's helpful. It saves having to make loads of new work. But it also may be a part of my Fringe show for next year. So let's see how this goes. Whether this sees the light of day is another thing. Hence why I'm recording it just in case. You can actually, I may just release it anyway. You know, it's interesting to see how things develop over time. Right. So, first story. It's called Simon or Simon the Occultist. Who knows? Don't know yet. Simon is an armchair occultist. He reads all the books. He dresses in a mysterious aesthetic, pointy little beard, tash, bit of mascara, you know, black, quite somber and severe. He does that to impress people, mainly because he has no personality. So this is his means of compensating for that. In fact, he doesn't actually believe in any of this occult stuff. You know, he wouldn't even know a demon if it bit him on the backside or not. It's just purely for show. Well, Simon's about to get a rather severe lesson. One morning he was in town, just doing his daily shop, and passing a charity shop. He spotted in the window some obvious occult materials, items, chalices, candlesticks, pentacles, all the usual kind of things. Now, the problem Simon had was that, yes, he's read all the books. Thing is, should he be out and about and actually meet someone who actually knows what they're talking about, because he has no practical experience, he fears he may get called out. And that would be a bit of an embarrassment, seeing his whole personality is based on this culture. Might change that word. So he buys these and carts them home in a box. Good price, worth a go. He dumps them by the front door and forgets about them. You know, Simon is a bit lazy in that regard. It's not until a few more days later, when he's a bit bored one evening, he spots the box and remembers, he needs to have a little experiment, just to try things out, just to run through what could possibly be a ritual that he may come up in conversation. So he digs the items out. He digs out a couple of books, leafs through them, finds a suitable one to have a go at. He's got all the bits. He's, you know, hasn't got everything, but this will do. You know, because this isn't really for real or anything, is it? This is just to go through the process and say, oh, he understands what's happening. should he encounter someone who challenges him. So he lays out a circle and puts all the bits where the book tells him to. And now the book tells him he needs to do some research beforehand. He chose a ritual that's going to like summon a spirit of some kind. Now the book says, lots of research, and Simon just can't be bothered with that. Again, this isn't for real. He doesn't believe any of this anyway, so it's just for show. So he skips that bit and just gets straight down to having a go through the motions. He follows the ritual of creating the circle, and he's walking around it, doing the things he needs to do. That all seems pretty reasonable, nothing unusual there. Standing in the middle, he then flicks through the rest of the book. Okay, he's got some things he needs to do. He'll skip those pages and then some more words, skip those pages. It's not really that important. Oh, and then now we've got to close down. Okay, not to worry. Oh, just for the laugh of it, just for kicks. Why don't I just say something? So, for a laugh, Simon says, is there anything out there? He wasn't expecting a reply, and he didn't get one. He says it again, just theatrically, with it waving his arms in a deep voice. Second time, nothing there. Good. Oh, blow it. Why not? Third time, they always says like threes and stuff. So he says again, really dramatically, is there anything there? And there's no reply. Of course not. It's not real, is it? He begins to pace towards the edge of the circle just to pick everything up, when the hairs on the back of his neck and his whole spine just tingle. He shivers. Ooh, that was a bit of a funny feel. He feels as if something's watching him. He knows there isn't. He's in the flat alone. He feels there's movement in the room. Okay, it's dark, just for a little bit of ambience, but he knows he is alone. He reaches towards one of the candlesticks to pick it up. There's movement of air, as if there is somebody out there. He's not entirely sure what to do. He's about to open his mouth to challenge whatever could be there, when something... Now, he thinks he heard it, but it seemed to go straight through the ears into his head. A deep voice that said, I have a gift for you. That throws him to the spot. The pit of your stomach, if you're on a roller coaster and you're at the top and it just begins, as it plummets, you feel that whole weightlessness, pit of the stomach fear. Well, that's what Simon felt. The voice repeated itself again. I have a gift for you. That sounded familiar. Really familiar. So he flicks through the book. He's frantically looking through the book, and he can feel there is something outside the circle. He can feel it moving round, circling. He can't see anything there, but he can feel the air move. He can feel eyes on him as he frantically looks through the book for the key points of this phrase. And then he finds it. It's a challenge. and a dire warning. Do not accept the gift. Well, he backpedals. As he says, he has read all the books. He knows what he must now do. He has to challenge the voice. Tell me your name, he loudly calls into the darkness. No response. He repeats it again, a little bit more frantically. Perhaps more frantically than he's willing to let on. Still no reply. Third time. He challenges, and he gets a reply. The same deep voice hits him in the head, bypassing his ears. The name, Azrael. The name sounds really bad. Familiar and really bad. He doesn't have the book handy with him that might help him. It's outside the circle. But he feels very fearful. He needs to resolve this rapidly. He is out of his depth. He didn't believe in any of this, but this is definitely happening. He can't quite believe it, but it's happening. What has he done? He continues to flick through the book. Closing ritual. How to get rid of things. He fumbles through. The voice again repeats, I have a gift for you. It is getting urgent. He feels it's testing the circle. It wants to come in. He knows he really does not want to feel and be face to face with this, whatever it is, and it feels bad. He finds this chapter in his book, Banishment. He begins a ritual which, prior to this, he wouldn't have put any effort in whatsoever because he never believed any of this before. But this time it's real. He really believes in this now. He puts everything in. Body, mind, and soul into forcing whatever this is away. First time through, nothing changes. He can still feel this thing circling. His heart is thumping. He is well out of his depth here. He gives it another go. Still refusing to go. He has to give it one last go. After that, he's exhausted all possibilities. And then what? The third time, reciting the banishing. He feels whatever it was disperse. Shaking and deeply disturbed, he plonks down in the middle of his circle, just to calm down and to make sure it's definitely gone. Sitting in that darkness, with just the candles around the circle, he waits, he listens, he feels. For the first time in his life, he is really feeling. It's gone. He carefully deconstructs and picks up all these items, puts them back in the box. And just for confirmation, he goes and picks up the books that he knows may contain this name. Well, it's a bad name. He knew it was bad, and this is one of the worst. Some obscure angel of death. How close was he to meeting it? Could have been quite bad. Perhaps after all of this, This isn't quite the life I want, he thought. So he packs all his books away. Over the next couple of days, clears the house, the flat, of all the occult material. He removes his little beard and his tash. He gets rid of the mascara. He changes his entire wardrobe. Perhaps no more as an armchair occultist. Right, that's that one. Thank you. First vocalization. There were a few rough points there that gotta change, but yeah, I think I'm reasonably happy with that one. Right, okay. Now, well, let's flick to another one. One I have not even had chance to rehearse. That one I've just done. I had a chance to rehearse that a couple of times while up at Fringe, and I was quite happy with that. But here's one I have not. I only finished writing it on the train home, and I have not even gone through it yet. Okay, what have we got? Okay. If I can read it without my glasses. I don't put glasses on when I've got camera because it reflects and it looks dreadful. So just got to look at it right away. Okay. Right. Okay. It's called Peveril's Tower. Up on the hill above where I live here in Dover. Up at the castle, the massive, huge castle that sits upon the cliffs. There's a tower called Peveril's Tower. It's had lots of uses over the years, from a jail to a variety of residential accommodation. During the 18th century, there was a warden of the tower, of the castle, and he was not a great guy. He was very unpleasant, in fact. You just get checking time. Okay. He was abusive. And he kept really vicious dogs. Well, one cold winter day, couple of youngsters from down in the town decided to have a sneak into the castle grounds just to have a bit of a nose and a bit of a lark, as youngsters do. They snuck in while the garrison, which was at that time barracks and so on, and had a good look around all the various stores and things, they could feed and entertain themselves. There's some of the stuff were pretty dangerous, lots of powder stores and so on. Well, the warden spotted them and, doing his job, he somewhat overreacted and let the dogs loose on the boys. The dogs scenting fear as the boys ran through the gates down into the town. The dogs just continued chase. The warden followed as quickly as he could, not at a run, obviously, because the boys weren't worth the effort. And he wanted the dogs to have their entertainment. It will teach the kids not to steal. Well, he saw the dogs chase the boys into a corner of some ruins. He got closer. Then he heard screams. Lots of screams from the kids, no doubt. The dogs were making a terrible noise. And then the screams stopped. The warden didn't really feel approaching those ruins were a good idea. Obviously, the noise of the dogs and the screams would have alerted others, and certainly there'll be other people coming by soon. And this wouldn't be a good place to be caught. Even though he was doing his job, he knew he had overstepped the mark. But not a problem for him. The dogs soon ran towards him. Their faces were stained. He knew what with. And he quickly ushered them back up towards the castle. He kept the dogs confined for a while, for a few days, and he kept his ear listening for any news from the town in case whatever happened to those boys had been found and traced back to him. Well, a week or two went by, no repercussions. He thought he was clear. He relaxed and went about the rest of his daily routine as normal. A month or so goes by, and by then, two little kids' thieving is back gone from his memory. So many other things he has to deal with as a warden. Yeah. I think I see a flaw in the plan here. Okay. We'll go with it. One night, the dogs are barking like mad. Have they sensed some more thieves? He peeks out the window. Nothing moving. Opens the door and goes out into the grounds, letting the dogs loose. They've obviously sensed something. Place is very quiet. It's getting on for midnight. There's the odd sentry around, but that give a nod to the warden as he's patrolling. So he's not quite certain what spooked the dogs. Heading to the wall, the curtain wall of the castle that runs along from his tower that circles the castle. He looks over. Nothing down there either. And then he hears growling. His dogs have found something. He turns to where the growling comes from. He lets out a small scream. He hadn't quite expected to do such a thing. And it's the first one he's probably actually ever done, to be honest. Because standing behind his dogs, those two boys, they stare at him. Their faces and body a mess of bites and cuts. They are deathly pale. And the dogs glare at the warden. They growl. Their muscles are budging to jump. The warden has never seen anything as hideous and as terrifying as this. He is frozen to the spot. Surely he isn't imagining this. Surely these boys, if they were dead, should not be standing here before him. If they are not dead, how are they still alive with such wounds from a month ago? The dogs begin a slight step forward. The warden is unfrozen, steps back. He holds his hands to his dogs. He's had these dogs a long time. He tries to calm. They are not responding. They take another step. Their growling is becoming louder. Their jaws wide open. He's seen that look before, but not from this angle. The boys who have been silent all this time, their mouths open, and a shrieking laughter erupts from them. The dogs launch at the warden. He cannot defend them. Their jaws clamp around his arms, and they push him over the edge of the wall, and he plummets to the ground on the other side. All of them are dead. It is said the ghost of the warden haunts the tower still. And on certain nights, the dogs can be heard howling for their master that they killed. Thank you. Yeah, that was so-so, you know. that was a so-so one. As I said, that was the first time. I need to tighten that one up. Okay, let's go for another one that I've been doing on. How are we? Half an hour. Let's have a go with a shortish one. Now, this one still only has a paragraph. I haven't fleshed this one out yet, but it's one I want to have a go at. Okay. It is 18. Oh, I can't even read that without my glasses. Hang on. What's that? I can't even read what that number is. Maybe 1813. No, that's a 9. God, really crap. Right. Yes, it would be 893. Okay. It's 1893. At the foot of the cliffs of Dover, which is now known as Samphire Hoe, there is the remains of a coal mine, one of the first coal mines in Kent. Digging began there a good 20 years previously. Throughout the digging, miners often reported unusual sights and sounds. Now, over the years, as the mining for coal developed, and science along with it too managed to explain many of these phenomenon, the miners still stuck to the fact that they could hear tap, tap, tap whenever it was quiet. And they saw lights shining in the darkness, which were definitely not other miners down there. Science explains some of this as just auditory hallucinations, and the light as just damp fire, the methane gas and whatever that would build up, that would kill many of the miners that work down there, sometimes just igniting slightly, producing a little bit of a flame. Well, the years went by and these legends stuck. Into the early 1900s, the mine became financially unviable and it began to be closed up and mining moved somewhere else. Before the mine was finally closed, a couple of the foremen decided just to, for old time's sake, listen and watch. They knew they were the only two left in this whole mine. Surely they could resolve this. They heard the tapping. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't continuous. In the total silence, they could hear. It wasn't a continuous tap. They listened intently. Now, it's hard to tell in the darkness of the mine. Time passes strangely. But there was no rhythm. Must have been natural then. But the volumes began to change. And their curiosity overcome them. And they went deeper into the mine. Just as, you know, just for the sake of curiosity. The noise was getting louder. They managed to find the scene where it was at its loudest. It was quite high up. It was, you know, this was dug quite a long time ago. They dug a lot deeper since then. But when they went past this one spot of the wall, it sounded, went quieter. So they put their ears to that part of the wall and they could definitely hear the tap. They could also feel vibration. That they didn't expect. That was definitely not an auditory hallucination. So, out of idle curiosity, just, you know, they took their pick and tapped the wall back. They weren't expecting anything to happen, but it did. The tapping stopped. They sat there for a while. Again, hard to tell in the darkness of the mine the passing of time, but it was certainly a good few dozen breaths. That they do know. And then the tapping resumed. Curious. They did it again. Shortly after they stopped their tapping, the tapping they heard stopped. Wow. This was difficult to explain. Even for science, they really could not work out what this possibly meant. Well, their only option was to light up their lamps and make sure they had enough and have a bash at the wall. Now, they were quite certain it was fairly safe to do so where they were. You know, as I said, the mine, this was an early part of the mine. It was above any possible high-risk areas. So they start, each taking a turn, whack, bang, bang, bang with their pickaxes, and the coal falls away. It then falls away to an empty space. Now, that was a surprise. They take their lamp and peer into the darkness beyond. They've broken into another tunnel. They pretty much certain they didn't dig. It was differently constructed. Surely this can't be an unknown competitor digging into their work. There would be legal repercussions for this if that was the case. So they make the hole bigger and squeeze through. The tunnel seems to be almost parallel, but on a bit of a bend. Now there's two of them. They know it's dangerous to explore. And of course, they're on there alone. No one really knows what they're up to. So as a pair, they check one direction. And as far as the lamp goes, it goes into darkness at the end. Coming back round the bend, they go into darkness at the other. Thinking about what to do next. The silence allows them to hear tap, tap, tap. It's coming from one of the directions that goes deeper. They follow with their lamp. They leave the other lamp at the hole just so they know where to come back. But they go together, gripping their pickaxes, just in case they encounter another team that's trying to steal their mine. It goes steadily down, gentle. It's certainly not using traditional methods that they're familiar with. It's more rougher. It's not long until they reach a large cavern that's been hollowed out on a completely different level to their own mine. One glance leaves them terrified. More so terrified at the many eyes that look back at them. They reflect their lamp. There are dozens pairs of eyes. The tapping has stopped. They hear a noise. It sounds like voice, but a language they do not know. Then there's movement. The eyes are coming towards them. They are just outside the lamp. range. They are outnumbered. Whatever these people are, they are outnumbered. And they don't seem very friendly. The two miners back out, waving their pickaxes menacingly, in the faint hope that they'll be able to defend themselves. The horde stay out of lamp range and move with them. They're grateful they're not being rushed. All is calm. Perhaps we are even. They lower the pickaxes just to show no threat. But the horde still moves with them. The two miners make it back to their lamp by the hole and scramble through, grabbing their lamp and running back out the mine as quickly as they can. One takes a glance behind. He screams at the sight of a creature no taller than his waist, standing in the mine tunnel next to the hole, gesturing wildly at the two men who are rapidly retreating. Unfortunately, the miner misses a step and lands on his face. He wakes a couple of days later, ranting about small little gnawed creatures. They're not believed, but there are things in the earth that are best left undisturbed. Yeah, not sure about that one. That was a paragraph, and I haven't actually worked on that one, but it has possibilities. Well, we're coming up to 45 minutes now. Let's see if we can. If there's another one, what have I got? Ones that I can actually read without my glasses on. What about that one? Okay, let's see. We've got a quarter of an hour. Okay, now this one I wrote. Let's think. When was this? Back in March, and I haven't read it since, and I don't know where the notes are, so I'm going to go by memory, which is never a good thing when I have not even performed it. It's one from our storytelling group. We were going to do a show, and I wrote a load of it. I did the whole plot, and we never did the show. So let's see if I can grasp my memory back. In the small village of Nonnington, out on the edges of Dover, is an estate called Fredville Park. It contains some of the most largest, beautiful old trees. In fact, the Majesty Oak, a 700-year-old oak tree, one of the oldest in the county, has remained standing there since the land was granted to the invading Norman barons. Now, it hadn't always been like that. The park at the moment stands with scattered ancient trees. It used to be a dense forest. But there is one tree that stands differently to all of these others magnificent trees, and is a tree dead, perfectly bleached white. It stands alone. Now, it is said that was the home of the Nonnington Witch. Back in the days when this was all forest, and those ancient trees were still young. She lived alone, minding her own business, really. Happy to help out with any local issues, midwifery or healing and so on. Most didn't disturb her. They just sought her help as and when. Well, the woman, actually I forget her name, it's been a few months, was said to have been quite beautiful, reclusive, fearful of her beauty being misunderstood. Well, the local lord who now inhabited the forest, who owned it, who was granted it by invaders, had a son, bit of a lech, bit of a boastful and nasty piece of work. Well, he heard of this witch, and he heard of her beauty. He also heard she was alone. Well, on one particular day, he decides to go for a hunt in the forest with his footman. Well, that was the pretense anyway. What he was going to do was going to pay her a visit and see if these stories matched reality. His footman was loyal. He warned his master, do not mess with this. She is well respected by the local folk. But obviously, the Lord's son was not going to let mere peasants put off his fun. And into the forest they go. Well, it's not hard to find her tree. The path is well travelled. The locals know it well. And the tree is one of the largest in the forest. The Lord bids his servant just to back off and let him have some peace and space to observe. Finding a corner in a bush. Corner in a bush? That's not right. Finding good cover in a bush. He settles in to observe. He watches a magnificent tree house up the tree. He sees movement up there. And then he catches through the windows a beautiful young woman. He desires her deeply. And the lech that he is approaches. Now, the only way in and out of this treehouse is a rope ladder. He would surely be seen by the witch. But another means of a climb had to be found, and he spotted a possible overhanging tree, or one that would offer some means to get close enough. So he climbs. He reaches the tree house and as quietly as possible climbs onto the roof. along the roof and down onto a balcony that overlooked the forest. The footman, fearing leaving his master too long could be a problem, he was well aware of the beauty of this woman, and he was well aware of what his master was capable of if left to his own devices, decided just this time to break his master's word and return, just to make sure things were all safe. Well, he caught his master at the moment he landed on the balcony and silently swore to himself, no good's gonna come of this. From his point on the ground, he could hear voices. There was shouting going inside the little tree house. He could make out his master's deep voice. He could also hear shrill shrieking from the witch. At that moment, he sees them both come out onto the balcony. His master is holding her. She is struggling. And suddenly, she turns and pushes back, and his master falls from the tree. He hits some branches on the way down and lands heavily. He screams in agony, and the footman runs to him. His leg is broken, quite clearly. Through the pain, his master demands being taken back home. He also swears. His master makes the footman swear. Now, I can't remember how this one goes now. Darn. Yeah, there was a bit of a Darn. Okay, we'll go with the way that I think it might work. I have to read this one. Yeah, that's the way he goes sometimes. You know, if you want to do a rehearse, you do a rehearse. And this is partly a rehearsal anyway. Okay. Again, this is probably the first time I actually vocalized this one ever as well. Might have done this in the workshop, but anyway, let's get back into character. Right, so he's returned back to his father, and the footman is promised secrecy that this got it. His master demands the footman, says that he suffered the injury while hunting. Now the footman, loyal to his master, reluctantly agrees. At least his master will be incapacitated to return to the scene of the crime to make any more mischief for this woman. Well, the Lord's son was laid up for quite some time, and a break at this time is quite serious. He is delirious. And in his delirium, he reveals he visited the witch. His father is furious. He knows what his son is like. He knows what his son was possibly intending. He also knows that should anything happen to his son or this witch, things could go bad either way. But did she attempt to kill his son? Can't quite know. Lost that bit there. The footman comes clean. He saw his son fall. He was attacking the witch, evidently attempting to force himself upon her. The father is not quite so convinced. So, taking some men-at-arms, he heads into the forest. As night falls, they circle the witch's tree. Luckily, they are slow, and the footman manages to get there first. He warns the witch danger's coming. She manages to escape just in time. Obviously, the men-at-arms and the Lord hurl abuse and demand her presence before them. But she is not there. She is hiding in the trees, watching what happens to her home. With no reply, as far as the Lord concerned, she has no, I don't know what words I'd use there. Not convicted herself, but I must have used something along those lines. Condemned herself. Possibly something along those lines. That's the kind of thing I was going for. And so they set a fire. The house burns rapidly, for it contains many of her healing ingredients, highly flammable. It burns quicker than they expected, and soon the tree is an inferno, which starts to spread to other trees. Soon the men-at-arms and the Lord himself are trapped in huge patches of fire. They are quickly overwhelmed and perish. The forest burns for a couple of days. There is not much left. There is no sign of the witch. She is either perished or gone. The local villages surrounding mourn their loss, for she was a valuable member of the community. The Lord and his son, not so much. The Lord's son dies from his injuries, for there is no healer. The very healer he spurned could have saved his life. And the Lord and his men-at-arms never returned home. And so the land now stands barren for this tree, for it, while it burned, was not completely consumed. It is a stark reminder to the power of the witch. Thank you. Yeah. That was... Yeah, gonna have to reread that one. And I think we will call that one the end. I have one more of these sci-fi and horror shows tomorrow. I might throw some of these stories in. You're welcome. We'll see what a second tally may do. I may not do all of them. I may do actually the proper show tomorrow, like I did last week, or well, 2 weeks ago, and maybe add the Simon story in with a few tweaks, because that's the more polished one. Who knows? Tomorrow's another day. But hopefully, if you are watching this, I felt brave enough to put it online. And if you're not, then But thank you for coming and thank you for watching in the future. Bye bye.